Thank you, everyone. So, Satsunmala, thank you for being with us. Maybe just to start with, especially because so many of us have been introduced to you through the Cave in the Snow book. We often think of doing a 3-month retreat as a long retreat, or a year-long retreat as a very long retreat. Very few of us have had anything like the experience that you've had of long-term retreat practice. And I'm wondering if you can start by saying something about the benefits of longer retreat practice.
Well, in our nunnery, Donjigatsaling, we also have a retreat center, and many of the nuns are just doing a 3-year retreat, but a group of them have taken a pledge for a lifelong retreat, and they have already finished 14 or 15 years of retreat. They are taught by the Tokdens, the yogis in Tashijong. And they're happy, is all you can say. I go to see them every 2 weeks, and they're a jolly lot. You know, sometimes people think meditation is something very grim and serious, and it's not. It should connect us with our inner joy. And so one of the points of having a very long time of retreat is that it gives time for this inner joy and wisdom and compassion to be nurtured and to grow. Like a plant, it takes time. A tree takes many years to grow and recognize its own potential. In Tashijong, where a number of the monks have been trained to become Tokden, the idea is that Tokden means a realized one. And what the realization, of course, is the nature of the mind. And not just to recognize the nature of the mind, but to stabilize that recognition, because that's the difficult part. I sometimes explain it like if you have dough and you put it in the oven, then turn the heat up on the oven, the dough will quickly rise. But if we say, oh, look, it's cooked, and we take it out of the oven, it will just collapse into a gooey mess because it's not cooked all the way through. And so they stay in retreat until they are totally 100% cooked all the way through. Then one can take the bread or the cake out of the oven, and it will not only maintain its shape, but of course it will be very delicious and nourishing. So that's the point of long retreats. It takes time to stabilize that level of genuine inner recognition of the nature of the mind.
I love the image of the nuns in lifelong retreat as a jolly lot.
They are. They really are very jolly. As I say, I go to see them every 2 weeks, and they're lots of fun. And what I personally think is amazing is that they only see each other and they don't see anyone else, and yet they're all such good friends with each other and are very supportive of each other. The older nuns teaching and guiding the younger nuns, the new ones who have come into retreat. Yes, it's a very happy atmosphere. They are fortunate in that when any High Lama, our own Lama, come to Rinpoche, or Taisita Rinpoche, Mingyu Rinpoche, Soknyu Rinpoche, and so forth, when they come to the nunnery to give talks to the nuns, they also go into the retreat center and give a Dharma talk on meditation to the nuns, and then they meet each nun separately, who will then discuss her practice and any questions she may have. They're really, all the lamas that come, the high lamas, have all been extraordinarily generous with their time. They spent hours in the retreat center, guiding the nuns and inspiring them. So the nuns are also very, very fortunate because they get to meet with all these great lamas.
I'm wondering if you could say something about motivation to make a commitment to be in retreat for life, or a 3-year retreat, or a 1-year retreat, or a 12-year retreat. Suggest something about the importance of motivation and how to hold motivation and what kinds of motivations we have. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about motivation, either your own or the nuns, or how you understand motivation in practice.
Well, of course, the underlying motivation is bodhicitta, and the desire not to waste this lifetime yet again, and to really make some genuine progress on the spiritual path, in order that throughout all our future lives we may come back and be of genuine benefit to all beings. Because wisdom and compassion is very lacking in our modern world on the whole. We have lots and lots of knowledge, but not much wisdom. And to actually stabilize our practice to the point that when, not just this lifetime, but in future lifetimes, we can come back and reconnect again with the Dharma and be able to be of some kind of benefit to other beings, is a very strong motivation. Recognizing that all beings want happiness and don't want suffering, but because of our ignorance and greed and aggression, we just create more and more problems. I mean, look at the world. We're supposed to be Homo sapiens, but where's the sapienza? I mean, it just isn't there. And we cause so much harm to ourselves, to others, to all the animals and beings and the environment. We need to wake up and stop, going through this nightmare which we project out, to really wake up to the way things really are. And for that, it does need concentrated effort. I mean, I know we're all trying to be effortless, but it takes a lot of effort to be effortless. As in any skill, I mean, if you're a musician, how long it takes, all the practice again and again and again, until you get to the point where the music plays through you. And the same is for cultivating the mind. We have such ingrained deep bad habits, which we have to really see clearly and, transform them from within. And it takes time. It takes time.
You mentioned bodhicitta, and in the title of one of your books, The Heroic Heart, I think you are referring to bodhicitta by the term heroic heart. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about what bodhicitta is, or what a heroic heart is, and what that means to you.
Well, of course, ultimate bodhicitta is the nature of the mind, is our Buddha nature, right? That's the ultimate level of bodhicitta. But relative bodhicitta means the aspiration to practice in order that we may eventually be able to really benefit other beings, however long that takes also, and for example, in the Tibetan tradition, when you're doing prostrations to the refuge field, you visualize all beings prostrating along with you. You're their substitute, but you're doing it on their behalf because they don't know how to do this or they don't have time to do it. And so we're taking all beings along with us. In Vajrayana practice, for example, one might transform oneself into Tara But then all beings transform into Tara. It's not just I'm Tara and you're just a sentient being, right? We recognize that genuine nature, pure nature of all beings, even when up to now they don't recognize it themselves. So whenever we do a practice, we are doing this on behalf of all beings. I think one nice thing in Buddhism is that right from the start there is this idea of living beings, of sentient beings, and not just humans, but animals, birds, fish, insects, all the beings, seen and unseen, that we are taking with us. Like if you're in a prison, then you open the door, then you have to open the door wide to allow all the prisoners out, not just yourself. And that's the aspiration, that it's not just so that I can become something special, but that finally we can wake up enough to be able to help others likewise to wake up. However long it takes. There's an awful lot of sentient beings.
You've been involved with a variety of engaged Buddhist activities. So your work, your connection to thinking about the suffering of sentient beings has played out not just, and I don't mean to say not just, but in prostrations, yes, but also in socially engaged work with international organizations, starting the nunnery. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to say a few words about the relationship between one's practice on the cushion or in a cave and social engagement, especially if one is on a path of cultivating compassion.
Oh, I think it's a very, very important question. Because, I'm saying that, yes, you need to spend a long time cultivating the ones in the practice. But in fact, it's like breathing in and breathing out. There are so many qualities of the heart that need other people, right? Like our ethical conduct and generosity, patience, loving kindness, compassion. It's one thing to sit on your cushion thinking, may all beings be well and happy, but it's another thing when you go out and have to deal with those beings, especially if they're difficult. And this is why I especially appreciated the latest book that I did on the heroic heart, because it's a commentary on the 37 practices of Bodhisattva. And it is dealing a lot with taking everything that we encounter and using it as the path. Right? This is incredibly important, that difficulties, loss, mental defilements, and whatever we have to deal with our families, our work colleagues, people in, the whole world is in such turmoil right now. How to, instead of despairing, how through the cultivation of skillful understanding and compassion to convert all of that into a very powerful spiritual practice. So you don't have to spend all your time on the cushion. I think even our nuns in retreat, a lot of their practice is dealing with each other. And they manage very well, but they are not each one in isolation. They each have their own room, but nonetheless they are together as a group. Our daily life is our practice. I think that's so important to recognize. It's not the obstacle to the practice. It is the practice. Then we whatever happens and however difficult there may be in our life, we can recognize that this is all helping us to develop our inner qualities, that we can't just practice when everything's smooth and nice and pleasant, that maybe the best practices are when things are going very difficult and challenging, and we're having to, have a lot of, just obstacles on the path. Those obstacles, if you say, one Lama said to me, if you say obstacle, it's an obstacle. If you say opportunity, it's an opportunity. And that's it. The question is, are we nicer people? All this Dharma that we're studying and we're practicing and all the retreats and everything, has that actually made us nicer, kinder people? That's the question. If it's just, polished up our ego, then what's the point?
Thank you. So, speaking about engagement in the world, I remember being at Tashijong when the nunnery was just starting, and I have seen from afar how much it has grown. And I'm wondering if you can say, in part because we are inviting Donna for this program, in large part to support the nunnery, if you could share a little bit about your motivation in starting the nunnery, and maybe some of the history for those who might not be familiar of the challenges for women wanting to pursue a deep Buddhist education. So what led you to start the nunnery?
Well, I started the nunnery because the lamas at our monastery in Tashijong said, we don't have anything for women, so you start a nunnery. And I knew that that's what I had to do, although I had no idea how to even start, because the previous Kamta Rinpoche, my root guru, had said on a number of occasions, I would like you to start a nunnery. So then when the lamas said, you should start a nunnery, I thought, yes, that's what I have to do, but how? I have no idea about, I had no money, I wasn't a Tibetan, I wasn't a lama, how do you even start? So I was very, what to do? Then I looked at a tanka of Tara, and I said to her, okay, lady, if you want a nunnery, you do it. I'll be in the front, but behind the scenes, you have to get this all together. This is your nunnery. And she did. I mean, it all came together. And the important thing is the increase of recognized potential of the nuns. Previously, they had always been really very overlooked. And in most nunneries, there was no educational program, and only very, very simple practices were given. And nowadays, not just our nunnery, but all nunneries have an educational program. As you say, there's some of them have become geshe-mas. In our tradition, they become kenmos. And they're studying very hard, and they also study ritual. And as I say, we also have a retreat center. And then in July and August, which is monsoon period, all the nuns do a 2-month silent retreat. So they're doing well. And what has to be said is that once everybody woke up to the fact that nuns had great potential, the monks really stepped on board and did everything they could to educate them and train them and encourage them. We have a beautiful relationship with our monastery down the road. And the monks have been terrific. Everything the nuns know, they learned from the monks in the... And now they teach each other, of course. I mean, most of our teachers are nuns. So it's been wonderful in the last 25 years or so that not just our nunnery, but other nunneries also are really flourishing. And the nuns are really well-disciplined, focused, intelligent, and very devoted. And so people are now appreciating how is it that we overlooked them for so long, right? Even the Karmapa, when he came, he said to the nuns, I apologize on behalf of all the lamas for all the centuries that we have neglected you, and that you had to pray to come back as a male in order to get any genuine opportunities for study and practice. And he said, nowadays that's not true. You have everything the monks have. And I personally think that the future of Dharma is in the hands of the women. And the Dalai Lama said the same thing to me. Because look, even in your Zoom, most of the ladies, right? I mean, the feminine is coming up, and this is good. I mean, it's not that it's therefore the male energy is going down, but there should be more balance. That's what we're trying to do, is to balance it. And give women a voice, which up to now they didn't have. So, I mean, as in America, I mean, so many of the top scholars and teachers and meditation teachers are women. Why not? And the men, you know, benefit from that as much as the women do. So it's good. The Buddha himself always talked about the fourfold Sangha, right, of monks and nuns and laymen, lay women. He never just said it's only monks. He always talked about the importance of the fourfold Sangha and how all of them should study and practice and propagate the Dharma. And now we're seeing that happening more and more, that also the lay side is coming up, and also the women are coming up. And it's beginning to become, not so much in America where monasticism is not very strong, but in Asia you can see it coming up. And it's balancing out so much better than it was traditionally, where all the attention was on the monks.
I think what you have just shared resonates deeply with many of us, and I really appreciate that. And the role that you've played in unfolding this process. I think that some number of the folks who are on this call are primarily in the Theravada tradition, and some number are more in Himalayan or Tibetan traditions. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to say a little bit more about what is, maybe what, a little bit more about the kind of education that a Tibetan nun might be able to have more generally in Himalayan Buddhism, what that education is about, and maybe the role of study and practice in that education.
Well, I mean, the main academic tradition is from Nalanda and Vikramashila, the great Buddhist monastic universities in India, up until around the 12th, 13th century. So people like Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Chandrakirti, and so forth, they wrote many commentaries and books, especially on what's called Madhyamaka and Yogacara. And that tradition was taken into Tibet. I mean, Tibet was quite close to India compared with China, say. So many scholars went to Tibet, many Tibetans went to India, and there was therefore an interchange between the two for many centuries, along with the Tantra. And so basically the Tibetan, why people are interested in the Tibetan tradition is because it is so rich. There's so much there. I often say it's like a Dharma supermarket, right? You go in there and there's so many different products that you can choose from. If this doesn't suit you, then how about that? Or not that, what about this? And also you can put it together, it's a kind of package deal. And you never get to the point where you think you know everything, because another tradition might be doing things quite differently. And so it's endlessly, it can be very confusing, but it is also endlessly, it's endlessly rich with all the teachings which were extant, including the Shravakayana Sutras, which came from, especially from Sarvastivadin. It has everything. Shravakayana, Mahayana, Tantrayana, Vajrayana, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, Vinaya. I mean, it has everything. And in that way, people can never feel that they have exhausted the potential, because there's always more. And that's why I think, and I mean, like with the Lojong teachings on taking all difficulties onto the path, such a useful teaching. It doesn't matter what you believe or don't believe. Even if you're not Buddhist, it doesn't matter. It's just very practical how to govern our lives with genuine meaning, put some meaning into our life, and transform our daily life into our Dharma practice. These very practical teachings that even people nowadays, at least in the West, in Zen schools and Theravada, are also incorporating these teachings, because they're just so useful.
Very useful and very vast. I remember, I forget if the Tibetan canon of discourses of the Buddha and commentaries, I forget exactly how many times, but I think it's about 15 times larger than all the extant texts we have from Greece and Rome.
Yeah.
It's vast, vast, vast.
Yes, it really is. And I mean, it's wonderful that the Tibetans actually got it and translated it, because otherwise it would be lost. Because much of that was not taken into surrounding Buddhist countries, and it was only translated into Tibet. So that's how we know what the extent of all this scholarship in India up until around the 12th century, when it was destroyed.
So you've said a little bit about the situation of women in Himalayan Buddhism, and we haven't really talked about the way in which there have been changes with regard to the full ordination of women. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that, and also maybe say something about the full ordination of women and the education of Buddhist women outside of the Himalayan regions, just because you have played an important role in thinking globally about the status of women in Buddhism. Maybe you could say a few words about that.
Well, of course, Buddhism hasn't done any better than any of the other religions in being very androcentric and misogynic. And so in most Buddhist countries, women are very much limited in their potential for study and practice. I mean, they are looked down on. Not in all Buddhist countries. There is, as you mentioned, this women's association called Sakidita, which means Daughters of the Buddha. And that is an incredible association of all traditions. So we have people coming from Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Korea, Taiwan, and China, and so forth, as well as from the West. And every 2 years they hold a conference in a different Buddhist country. Just now, in June, we held it in Korea, and 3,000 women on the main day, 5,000 women. And it was incredibly joyful and fun. When women all come together, if they're in harmony, then they really enjoy themselves. And of course there were academic papers and workshops and meditation in all different traditions, chanting in all different traditions, but a tremendous sense of feminine energy, right? And the Korean nuns, of course, are highly educated, highly articulate, and in the Mahayana countries, they have full ordination for nuns and have had so since the early centuries. So the nuns are very very influential in society. They start colleges, they start schools, they start orphanages, state-of-the-art hospitals. They have a lot of social outreach, and they're tremendous confidence and are appreciated by the lay community and also by the monks. I think they get along okay with the monks. Everybody, there's not like the monks up here and nuns down here, like as in Thailand or Burma. They have the same name. They're in Korea, they're called sunim. So monk or nun, you're a sunim. And of course they dress the same. And the Mahayana countries probably have the greatest stability of equality between male and female. And why not? Why not? In the Tibetan tradition, when the idea of educating nuns really got on board, the monks, as I say, were extremely helpful and really went out of their way to educate the nuns and to pass on the teachings and the study to them, and debating and so forth. But when it comes to full ordination, you really hit a big stone wall. It's been really interesting. They've been researching it for about 30 years, but they still haven't come to any conclusion. Last year in Bhutan, the Je Khenpo, His Holiness the Je Khenpo, who is the head Lama of the monastic community in Bhutan, gave full ordination to 142 nuns. And he is planning to give the ordination again next year in 2024. So, but in general, that was ignored by the Tibetan community. Oh, well, that's Bhutan, you know. Even though Bhutan has the same lineage as the Tibetans. It's been interesting to watch the resistance from the male side when it comes to the idea of nuns gaining full ordination. But in the end it will happen. It has to, because now the nuns are highly educated. 30 years ago, it's true, they were not educated and they lived in very poor nunneries, and really if they had taken full ordination at that time, they would have fallen flat on their face. But that's not true now. Now they're highly articulate, they're highly educated, they live in very well-run nunneries, they have perfect ethics. There's simply no excuse anymore not to give them the ordination which the Buddha himself bestowed. So it will happen, but it's a bit slow. We're hoping that a number of our senior nuns will go for the ordination in Bhutan next year. Our Lama Kamta Rinpoche, fortunately, has no objections to their being ordained and says that he will encourage them. They need to hear that from the lamas, that's the problem. And as long as the lamas are saying you don't need it, it's not necessary, all those rules, how will you keep them? Then the nuns say, no, we don't need it, we already have so much. And, you know, what they need is to be encouraged. But eventually it will happen. it's been interesting, the resistance.
Yes, interesting, and maybe that is this world of samsara.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
In Bhutan last year, when the nuns received the full ordination, like one nun said, you know, I have always prayed to come back in a male body in order to get full ordination so I can complete the path. Now I don't have to. I have everything I need in a female body. And she was just so overjoyed that everything was possible just as she was. She didn't have to think that somehow being a male was superior.
that sounds like a beautiful revelation. And it reminds me of a vow that you are very well known for, namely that you would be reborn in a feminine form until you attained enlightenment. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share something about how making that vow has influenced your life, or how you've lived with that vow, which you made when you were relatively young, has informed your life.
Well, you know, I mean, the point was that it's such an androcentric system that it was obvious that one more guy was not necessary. What we need is some women out there. And personally, I think a female body is very comfortable. And I have not the slightest desire to have a male body anymore. And so, just as Tara said, well, look, there's lots of men out there giving the teaching, but who is there for the women? You know, that's what I felt. Well, we need to not give up on the girls. We need to, you know, go forward with that. If we all then pray to come back in a male body, what is that saying? Because female body, male body, neither is superior or inferior. They're just two sides of the same coin. So why is all the emphasis on the male body? Because the males had the opportunities for study and practice, which was denied to the female for no reason, because the females are perfectly intelligent and dedicated and focused. In fact, maybe sometimes more than the monks. And so, you know, we have to, you know, encourage that side to come up and hold, as I say, a balance now. Not that they should be overlooked intentionally or unintentionally through the centuries. It's still, you know, these Buddhist organizations, at least in Asia, are still very, very male-centered. And with Sakidita showing that, you know, 3,000, 5,000 women coming, it's not there's a lack of women, but they are not incorporated into these Buddhist societies. And so in the West it's changed because women now, you know, are in the forefront. But in Asia they're still lagging behind in general, especially in most of the Theravadan countries and the Himalayan countries. But they're getting on. They are slowly, slowly, you know, coming up. And I think everybody will gain from that. It's not a, you know, win-lose situation. It's a win-win situation. A while back, 100 monks from our monastery in Tashijong came to the nunnery to debate. You know, they do these philosophical debates. They came to the nunnery to debate with the nuns for the day. And as far as the nuns were concerned, the nuns won. The monks were very good about it. I mean, they didn't mind. But the nuns, you know, they gave back as well as they got. And I mean, why not? Women are the nature of of wisdom, right? Prajna Paramita. She's the mother of all the Buddhas. And in Tantra, women are the nature of wisdom, right? Men are the nature of skillful means. So how come that they've been denied their opportunity for study and practice up until very recently? So, I mean, as I say, it's not like Sakidita, it's very pro-female, but it's not anti-male. And, I mean, Philippe here went, didn't you?
I did, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of, men come too because they enjoy it. Such an uplifting atmosphere, such fun. All these women coming together, and they can speak out what they really feel because they have all these thousands of women listening to them. Whereas normally in a Buddhist conference, it's all monks and old guys, and then women are very intimidated to say anything, right? They have to try to, please them. But in Sakidita, then they can be honest, but not angry. They're not angry. They're just sharing their good experiences and their difficult experiences, and everybody has a tremendous sense of support and empathy. It's a very unique situation, actually, Sakidita. There's also a branch, a chapter in the USA. But it's nice because it's totally non-denominational. Theravadins, Mahayana, Vajrayana, everybody together, no high and low, no underlying agenda from anywhere. Everybody's appreciating each other, which is beautiful.
As we come to the end of our time together, and I am so appreciative because I know that you are not feeling well, and I really appreciate you doing this. And I also know that in the trajectory of your own life, you are coming to the end of traveling and teaching and even doing events like these. And I wonder if you have any reflections on this new stage of practice of your life, especially as many of us who live elsewhere in the world, we may not have the opportunity to connect with you again. I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how you are teaching and practicing now. Maybe that is too broad of a question and maybe too personal. I don't know, but I'm curious to hear what you might reflect on.
Well, mostly I'm here, helping to run the nunnery. My life is not exactly very exotic. In the morning I deal with correspondence and administration, and in the afternoon meeting with people, because a lot of people, they come, say, to Dharamshala, they take a 10-day course in basic Buddhism in Tushita, and they think, wow, this is great, but where do I go from here, right? So then a lot of the people that come, because they're sort of a bit confused what they should do next and how they should go forward. So I meet them and give them an opportunity to talk about their life and their situation and any questions they may have. So the afternoons are taken up with meeting people. So mostly, we spend a month a year in retreat, but mostly we're just, hanging out at the nunnery. The nuns are good. I mean, we are very appreciative. Most of the nuns, well, all the nuns, there are a few who are Tibetan from Tibet, but most of the nuns are from Ladakh and and all these Bhutan and all these Himalayan regions which are traditionally Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist. And so all along the north of India, you have these very high Himalayan valleys where the people are traditionally Tibetan Buddhists. And so most of the nuns come from those regions. And of course, most of the monks also come from those regions nowadays. Almost all monasteries are full with these Himalayan people, not with the Tibetans. It's an irony that nowadays young Tibetans are not going into the monasteries, not in India anyway. They still do in Tibet, of course. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy that the nuns are well, that they're flourishing, that they have an enthusiasm to study and practice, and that they live together in harmony. And yes, I feel that that's a wonderful thing. And so, you know, if I die tomorrow, at least I've done something. And it's good, you know. I mean, I think that it's a very, now as one looks around, the nunneries really are quite flourishing. Not just ours, but all the others too. And this is very encouraging for the future of the female participation in the Dharma. And no scandals.
We're going to end with a Dana talk, and then I would like to invite you to dedicate the merit of our time together. I've received a few questions that people shared in the chat, and there was one that I don't want to go too far over our time, but I really think that you might have something helpful to say. One participant said, I wonder what advice you would give as to better manage the anger to being in a society that does not give us, the women, the same opportunities. Is there something that you might be able to say about that?
Yes, I mean, I really think anger is a very tricky point, because many people feel that, you know, justified anger is fair enough. But actually, the root of anger is a negative root. It's a poison. And so what we need is to transform that anger into skillful compassion on all sides. The men as well as the women, and the perpetrators and the victims, all of them are in need of compassion. And compassion doesn't have to be like Tara there, you know, smiling sweetly and holding a lotus. I mean, Tara also can be very wrathful. Among her 21 manifestations, several of them are quite wrathful. And but it's still, the root is not anger, the root is compassion and the clear seeing of the situation, how to deal with it skillfully. Because anger always ends up making us feel turmoil and unhappy. It's not a happy emotion. Whereas open compassion and seeing the situation clearly and feeling, compassion doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't, I mean, if somebody's doing something which is not right, we can say it's not right. But it doesn't mean that we have to get all upset and angry about it. We can also see that it's on account of people's delusion and their negative habitual responses to situations. So what we need to do is to transform our anger into something much more positive, which will open up the you know, if I'm angry with you, then that inflames you to be angry back, and then there's conflict, because I'm right and you're wrong. And you're thinking you're right, I'm wrong, right? And neither side is listening to the other. But if we have genuine understanding and compassion, even though we can say, no, this is wrong, we'll stop that, it's not based on hate, it's based on really seeing how sad that we, people and ourselves, do unskillful actions which cause harm to others and to themselves. And how to deal with that skillfully to transform that into something positive. That's the point. I mean, anger is a very, I mean, just now we're going through the patience chapter of Shantideva with the nuns. And again and again and again, he's talking about how, you know, anger just creates more problems and how we have to transform it into something more positive. And that way we continue to walk on the path. Yeah, women have had a bad deal, not just in Asia, everywhere. But, you know, partly it's their own fault because women also tend to support the men and like male authority figures and don't show the kind of respect and appreciation for each other. So that's, you know, women often are the ones who create more problems for women than the men do. So it's not just all the, you know, the bad boys. You know, the women also can be very, very unkind to other women. So we have to transform our basic responses, really look at it very clearly into our mind to see the root of these negative impulses and transform them into something really of benefit to ourselves and to others.
Thank you, Jetsun Malach. I am going to say a few words about dana, and then maybe would you be willing to dedicate the merit at the end? Okay. So, as many of you know on this call, the word dana in a Buddhist context refers to generosity. It's the first virtue of the bodhisattva, as it is both relinquishing that to which we might be attached and also meets the immediate needs of others. And it's etymologically related to our English word donations, but in a Buddhist context has a much more expansive meaning. If one reads the text that was just referenced, Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara, there is a beautiful chapter, chapter 5, on generosity and the way in which giving away something relinquishes, it's even a pen or a watch. We have such a connection with mindness and a hold, and that liberation begins in some way through dana. And one meaning of dana as practiced here at Wonderwell and here at the Barre Center for Buddhist Studies is the sense of generosity that leads someone like Jetsun Mala to teach freely. There's no financial contract. And it comes from a life of freely offering all those years of practice, all those years of institutional building, all those years of engagement. I think of you hearing the monks say, or your teacher say, okay, time to start a nunnery. And you feeling you're not a Tibetan, you don't have money. There is a generosity of spirit that says, okay, I will offer myself. And generosity plays out in many ways as service, as practice, I think, is a kind of generosity. And as many of you know, where this is going is to a link in the chat where you can make a financial offering if you are in a life situation where making a financial offering makes sense for you. One of the things that Shantideva says is don't try to give too much because it will lead to resentment. Start with giving vegetables, he says, and then you can work up to giving even your body and your life. But most of us are not there, but many of us can offer some vegetables. But if you're not there, no pressure. And I want to say that the donations from this offering will be shared by the nunnery and also support some of the work that is being done to serve the Dharma here in the West. So there's a link that Jen has put into the chat. And another way that we think of Dana is hearing some feedback about the program that we have offered this morning, ways in which we might do things in a more inviting way or a more skillful way. So if you're willing to fill out that survey, that is also an act of Dana. And maybe before you dedicate the merit, I just want to say on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of my own life and the teachings I've received from you, Jetsun Mala, and the many people around the world, I just want to express my deep, deep gratitude and my aspiration that those of us who have heard your teaching will take it on in the spirit that you have taken on the teachings that you've received. So thank you so much.
So we can dedicate the merit, which we have hopefully amassed here from at least discussing certain Dharma principles and encouraging people to practice. May all that go in the form of light and love and compassion throughout the world. Because right now the world, as we know, is yet again in a very, very difficult space. So much hate, so much fear, so much desire for retaliation. We should counter that with love, compassion, and a desire for the genuine happiness of all living beings on this beautiful planet, which we are unfortunately so keen to destroy. So may all beings be well and happy. It's very beautiful just that all beings, all conscious beings, may they be well, may they be happy, may they be free from suffering. Thank you, William.